Do you ever find yourself listening to the news, reading articles, listening to podcasts and going, oh my God, how much craziness can there be? How insane can they get? That's what I'm going to be talking about in this video.
Take the first step towards online privacy. Get NordVPN.
I invested £25,000. Today, that investment is worth £5 million.
Say hello to our hero, the Hydrogen Energy Release Optimizer. Limitless power, zero emissions.
Hi everybody, this is Crypto Rich, working with you to get rich with crypto, filling our pockets with crypto profits. And this video, we're going to be going through some of the insanity, the themes that underscore the insanity that's going on at a macro level. Now, for this video, I am indebted to Stack Hodler. I got the inspiration from his Twitter account from a series of tweets that he posted, and I recommend you go and follow him, and I will have his Twitter handle in the description below. Actually, you can see it there, right, at Stack Hodler Twitter. But also, please follow me on Twitter, CryptoRichYT, join my official Telegram announcements channel. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please come and follow me on bit.ly/CryptoRichOdyssey, bit.ly/CryptoRichOdyssey, censorship resistant platform, and I post additional material there. And all it takes is an email sign up, no KYC. That's it, right? So by the way, Stack Hodler, let me say something about him. He offers a paid service, which I don't know anything about because I'm not a subscriber, but you might want to go and investigate. Based upon the quality of his tweets, it should be pretty good. And he looks at macro with a Bitcoin lens from an alpine village. And there you can see the alpine village. I bet that's what it looks like as he looks outside his window every day. And I bet he also dresses like that as well. So this, October the 17th, 2022, he posted this, but it's still relevant today as I record this on the 24th of April, 2023, and this will go out a few days later. So these are the 5 biggest macro trends driving your portfolio, driving finances right now, right? 1, we're in World War III. Oh yes. 2, the Fed is a weapon. 3, the end of the big debt cycle. 4, energy and inflation as severe constraints. And 5, the global search for a new reserve asset. And this is explained in 5 tweets, so let's go through them. So we're already in World War III. The dollar reserve system is under threat, and with it, the United States' status as a global hegemon. Chinese and Russian actions can be viewed as a coordinated attack on the existing world order, and the US and Fed policy can be seen as attempts to defend the existing world order. Now, one of the things that's happening lately, and I don't think it was happening in October, I certainly hadn't heard about it, is that certain indebted nations, like in Africa and South America and other parts of the world, they're finding it difficult to make their debt repayments as interest rates go up. And instead of restructuring, as has been usual through the IMF, will lend you more money, but you've got to sell more of your state assets, which then get sold for pennies on the dollar to Western corporations, and the nation gets poorer and becomes indebted to the West and to these rapacious corporate vultures from Western companies, courtesy of the IMF and the World Bank. Instead of that debt restructuring happening, China and Russia are saying to these nations, just nationalize your assets. Default on the debt. You don't have to pay it back. Nationalize your assets. Now that is an assault on the status of the US dollar and the Western financial institutions that shore up the dollar status as the world reserve currency. That wasn't happening in October 2022 when Stack Hodler posted this tweet. A world war happens whenever an ascendant nation challenges the existing dominant power and attempts to create a new world order in their favor. In this case, China and Russia are seeking to end United States hegemony and set new rules to the game. This is extremely disruptive to the financial world, and the shakeup threatens to completely reprice assets that many investors assumed were risk-free. And here's a tweet from him in September 2022. The EU Commission is saying that Russia is weaponizing energy. Right, thank you, EU. The US has weaponized the dollar. That's right, they've weaponized the dollar by sanctioning countries with it. And certainly what they did with Iraq and Libya, who threatened to use alternative currencies. Well, those regimes had to go. China has weaponized supply chains. And Europe has weaponized regulations. And I think most apparent of all is the European neo-imperialism in the form of the climate change agenda that we're going to impose. We're going to create the regulations that the rest of the world is going to go by. Yeah, right. Thank you. In case you haven't noticed yet, the world has been at war since 2020. As usual, ordinary people like you and I, we are the primary victims. The Fed is a weapon. The Fed is fighting existential threats to the USD system. Through a combination of interest rate increases, reverse repo, and QT, the Fed has withdrawn dollar liquidity and exposed the dangerous economic fault lines from London to Beijing. Now, Tom Luongo talks about this a lot, how the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates and dollars are moving from low interest rates to where they're better served, where they're going to get a better return. And that is draining the European Union in particular of any liquidity and of any the financial power that it gets from being able to set dollar interest rates through LIBOR. That's now being replaced by SOFR in June, which is domestic. But it also means they can't borrow or create loans, creating dollars out of thin air if the dollars are leaving the European Union for the United States. And then that's taking away their streams of finance. And Tom Luongo says that's because Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, the banks that own the Federal Reserve, do not want central bank digital currencies, and they're out to break the euro. And one point, if there's anybody here who's a Remainer or was a Brexiteer and thinks that Britain should go and rejoin the EU is bust. Any illusions of growth the EU has been a function of cheap money. For 8 years, negative interest rates and zero interest rates. So you can borrow money at no cost or even make money from borrowing money, which is upside down finances. And cheap energy from Russia. Cheap energy from Russia is gone and cheap money is gone as interest rates have gone up. Okay, the USD system is under threat. Large nations are openly discussing a move away from the dollar. And this is from a tweet from September 2022 that he posted. And that process has just accelerated. I saw something today where Zimbabwe, which doesn't really have its own currency, its currency just gets inflated away and people transact with dollars. They're going to issue some of its currency such that it's gold backed, which is a move away from the dollar. Next, end of the big debt cycle. Interest rates were held at 0% for so long that the whole world racked up piles of debt. Now that debt can only be paid back via mass default or mass money printing. And money printing for various emergencies is the most likely outcome. Now, this is what happens with fiat currencies every single time. They just get inflated away. And they're not money, they are promises to pay. They are debts. Energy and inflation constraints. Kicking the can by printing money has severe consequences where energy is scarce and inflation is high. Central banks are trapped. They need to print to prop up debt markets, but printing worsens inflation, and they're stuck in a vicious cycle. So why does all this matter? Well, here's the key takeaway. Inflation and increased energy costs act as a severe constraint on debt-laden Western governments. See, the ECB needs to print euros to prop up European debt markets and help their citizens with high costs. But printing money weakens currency and makes energy imports even more expensive. Now, all the more so since a couple of weeks ago, OPEC Plus, they reduced their production quotas, which meant the price of oil has gone up. So now the oil and gas have become even more expensive in euros to buy. More expensive energy makes inflation worse and causes debt markets to sell off even more, which causes the ECB to print more to buy debt. And it's a vicious cycle. And no one is more trapped than the Eurozone countries. Something has to give, but what? Most likely, it'll be the euro currency and the general living standard that will suffer. Fifth point, a new reserve asset. The days of government bonds as the go-to reserve asset are over. Countries need a store of value that can't be debased, seized, or manipulated by any government. The search for a new reserve asset is just beginning, and the implications are staggering. Now, more and more countries, more and more central banks are buying up gold. They're buying up gold because gold doesn't go to zero. Gold is the ultimate form of money. Everything is measured against gold, including Bitcoin. All right, including Bitcoin. Maybe one day that will change, but right now, gold is the foundational money for all the other monies, for all the other currencies going. Now, it might be that countries start mining Bitcoin, which will send the price of Bitcoin through the roof. It might be that countries offer to buy Bitcoin of those that are holding the Bitcoin, their citizens, which would also send the price of Bitcoin through the roof, because Bitcoin cannot be duplicated and it's way more scarce than gold and silver. Significant loss in demand for US treasuries limits the US ability to run fiscal deficits and could cause a collapse in the value of US government bonds and eventually the US dollar, as the Federal Reserve is forced to print USD to buy unwanted treasuries. Now that the dollar and Treasury Reserve assets have been weaponized, many countries have realized they need to find a neutral reserve asset that sits outside any one nation's control. Now, the most important factors in a reserve asset: 1, that it can't be debased; 2, it can't be seized; 3, it has deep global liquidity; 4, it can retain value for the long term; and 5, neutrality. No one government controls its issuance or its ability to be used. The dollar and US current treasuries no longer fit these criteria, and there are few globally available assets in mind. The dollar and US, what am I saying? The dollar and US treasuries no longer fit these criteria, and there are few globally available assets that do fit these criteria. Now, gold fits these criteria, and Bitcoin does, but Bitcoin hasn't yet reached a point where it's being recognized as a reserve asset at a sovereign level. Maybe one day that will happen. Let me know in the comments below, and do follow Stack Hodler. I'll link to his description below, his Twitter account. And if you find this stuff interesting and want to develop a clear vision of the big macro picture, come join a group of like-minded investors on Stack Macro Pro. And there's a link to his Slack group if you want to go and join and subscribe to him there. This wasn't sponsored by him. I just like his work. Go check it out. And between now and when I see you next, please keep filling your pockets with gold, silver, and Bitcoin. Oh, and freedom as well while we're at it. This is Crypto Rich signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.